resources or the time to get to everywhere.
Well, Jason Kirkpatrick is a climate expert from LA and former vice mayor of Arcata in California with experience in natural disaster planning and management. His cousin's home also burnt down 3 years ago in a wildfire. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. So we heard their mention of the governor of California asking for an inquiry into why those fire hydrants ran out in that way. What's your theory about what happened?
Well, we've seen some reporting on that, and I mean, we're talking about a really one-time event in terms of it being the worst ever fire in LA. My experience with natural resource disaster or natural disaster planning is that you should try to plan for a worst case scenario. In California, there's fires and earthquakes. In Britain, it's more flooding that would be something that would have to be prepared for. But when you have these kind of events that we see more and more of with extreme weather caused by climate change, which are going to be growing, to battle fire like this, you would need 5 or 10 times or as many firefighters, and the budgets just aren't going to be ever ready for that. So they're going to have to look at these issues like water, but at the same time, people just have to start being a bit prepared for this. Planners are going to have to plan a bit better, but also we need to start really tackling climate change and climate disruption, which is going to be saving money actually in the long run compared to these billions that we are losing on these catastrophes.
And you mentioned there the need to plan for the worst case scenario. It seems there's quite a lot of anger around that perhaps there wasn't enough of that planning. Is that your experience in the area, or do you think that it was the intensity of this was out with any kind of planning?
When some things can be planned a bit better, I'm sure that there will be changes made in a year. But some things, when you have 100-mile-an-hour winds whipping around, you just can't do that much about it. I did grow up in this area. I remember as a youth standing on the roof of my home with wooden shingles because Northwest California, the Western U.S., they have big forests and all the homes are made out of wood. It's not like most of Europe. And our roof, believe it or not, had wooden shingles, which is crazy. In between, they've been more fireproofed and all, but I would stand on the top a couple of times with a garden hose, watering that down so it wouldn't catch fire. And when the winds are whipping at 100 miles an hour, sometimes they could be coming from the north or northeast 1 minute, the next minute the southeast. There's just not much you can do about that. And you've heard about people saying, "Wow, it was on another ridge 10 minutes ago, and then it's by my house." And means a fire can jump miles, and you just can't plan for that. And so you have to cut the fire department and the city planners a bit of slack there.
And what about preparedness? I mean, you mentioned that in your case you were busy kind of watering down the top of your roof. In general, do you think people haven't been prepared enough to take measures themselves that might help them?
There's a couple of issues here. So one is the urban planning. Are people going to be allowed to build in these fire zones in the future, like far away from the city? This has to be looked at. So we heard that around Malibu, the average cost of the homes is $2 million, almost a couple £1 million. These are people with money, and they want to put the money up on the hill, have a nice view. But then does the government and the state and the fire department, do we need to subsidize these risky kind of investments for these folks? They have to look at it whether or not this is going to be banned because it's kind of a public subsidy of this kind of lifestyle. And I think they're not going to be able to rebuild again and again in these fire zones. It's just not working out. The same in Britain in a flood zone. You wouldn't have a house washed away a couple of years in a row and then want to rebuild there. It just makes no sense as we see these climate catastrophes getting